Good evening, everyone. This is Specialist Leon Padilla, and today I will be conducting a class on developing resiliency within a squad. The following brief is unclassified. So on the agenda today we have intro. How is resiliency developed within a squad? And what is resiliency? Examples of developing resiliency will also be featured. And if you guys have any questions, we will leave them towards the end. What exactly is resiliency? And how is it developed within a squad? Resiliency is the ability to overcome rapidly after experiencing any sort of trauma, tragedy, or death. Resiliency, along with discipline, loyalty, and respect, are very important traits that all soldiers should have. How is resiliency developed within a squad? Resiliency is developed in a squad by becoming proficient in energy management. A good way to do that is by constantly being around a positive atmosphere with soldiers that produce positive morale. Solving problems as a team can also develop resiliency, and having good eating habits and performing daily exercise can sustain resiliency. Resiliency can also be built out in the field during training exercises. Severe weather can have an impact on troops out in a war zone or in a training environment, but this could also help build resiliency. Examples of resiliency. Sergeant Gonzalez is a decorated squad leader of an infantry battalion currently deployed to Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a war-torn nation in the Middle East. Approximately 48 hours ago, his platoon came back from a patrol. During the patrol, his platoon took heavy contact from the enemy in the nearby valley. The firefight lasted approximately 5 hours, and by the end, he realized a series of unfortunate things. Sergeant Gonzalez lost 2 men in his squad. The 2 men he lost was a young Private Johnson. He met Private Johnson less than a year ago. The other casualty is Corporal Sanchez. Corporal Sanchez was one of his most talented and gifted team leaders. He also struggled to feel his right leg and his right arm after surviving a series of explosions caused by rocket-propelled grenades. After the patrol ended, Sergeant Gonzalez was taken to the hospital so his injuries could be evaluated. After 5 hours of intensive surgery, Sergeant Gonzalez finally wakes up. The medical team that assisted him reveals to him that his right leg and right arm are going to get amputated. His limbs are then amputated and he is sent back home and eventually gets medically discharged from the Army. Sergeant Gonzalez went through a rough transition into the civilian sector. It took him approximately a year to finally get employment. Throughout those months that he was unemployed, he also faced several other obstacles, like learning how to use his prosthetic arm and his prosthetic leg. He went through a rough time, but he stayed positive and continued to work hard to improve his life, despite recently losing 2 of his soldiers and 2 limbs, which affected his life. Another good example of resiliency would be to bounce back from a divorce that ended a marriage of 20 years. Back in the year 2017, I was a 19-year-old private first class. I was deployed to a region in Europe known as the Balkans. I spent a majority of the deployment in the nations of Romania, Bulgaria, and I endured a lot of harsh things during that deployment, such as long smoke sessions with my counterparts, and we also endured many days in the field in really harsh, freezing conditions. During that deployment, my mother was on the verge of dying from kidney disease, and unfortunately, I lost a close cousin towards the end of the year. I could have let all these things affect my daily life, but I remained driven and resilient so my unit's mission could be accomplished. Why is it important to have resiliency present in a squad? It is important for resiliency to be present within any fire team, squad, or platoon or company, because in a combat zone, death and trauma are things that are always going to be present. And leaders and troops, no matter what rank, they must always be resilient because they have to accomplish the mission. And that concludes my brief.